And hello, everybody. Say hi to YouTube. Oh, do I not have chat on screen? Ah, that's fine. I'm too lazy to fix that right now. Anyway, still say hi to YouTube. You are now being observed. Hi anyway, YouTube. Yes. Yes. Good. So, okay. Full disclosure, this isn't completely blind. It has, because it's always out for a few hours when I get to it, and I was skimming during my break at work today. Also, I did see the map, which we're going to look at shortly, because they posted it yesterday on Blue Sky. Old Medieval World. Hello and welcome to this first development diary about the upcoming All Under Heaven DLC. Here is said map and its associated update. I am Trin Trangula, one of the lead devs on Crusader Kings 3, and today I get to talk about East Asia in the Middle Ages. Yay! It's going to be a high-level dev diary where we look at the vision for the entire expansion and all we aim to do in it. It will be followed by many more detailed diaries for the features and individual regions of the expansion. Excellent. Okay, so let's take a minute, because this is much higher res than the one on Blue Sky. So, like, I didn't notice this on my own. Someone did point this out. Can I zoom in further? No. Does look like there's some wasteland in Hokkaido, which is interesting. We do have some occupied holdings in Papua. Sound Coronet. Pagan's gotten a little bit reshaped. Minja Kitans. Oh, so which year is this? This must be 1066. That makes sense. I don't know a lot about my history in this region in the time period. We have the Jurchen tribes here. I don't know if they were settled in this area. This area is very decentralized. That's interesting. East of Mongolia. Mongolia being here. Lot of wasteland around here too. It really limits your expansions in the steppe. I'm looking forward to seeing what they have going on with the Philippines, because I know nothing about Philippine history before colonization. That might be a really fun region to play in. Angkor, Dai Viet, Dali. Very excited. I like this new map table very much as well. Now that I'm looking at it a little more closely. Very pretty. First look at... Oh! And I completely forgot to look over here. More Africa. They snuck in more Africa. We kind of knew this. The people who were paying attention knew they were going to sneak in a little Africa, but... This is fun. You could do something here. I don't know what, but... The horniest part of Africa, it's true. I don't think they expanded West Africa down south. I don't think, like, the Central African coast has I don't remember the proper name for this coast. Has any new territories? I think this was where it ended already. But that's fine, I guess. Disappointing if you live here or have ancestors here. Sure, but it's a small, this is not a lot of extra territory. This wouldn't have been an extra lot of territory. I'm not gonna lose sleep over it for, unfortunately is what I was gonna say. I don't know. I'm not gonna lose sleep over it one way or the other. First look at the world of Crusader Kings with everything between the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. Like everything else in this diary, the map is a work in progress and subject to change. This includes coloring of the map itself, which is something we're experimenting a bit with right now. Okay. I hadn't really thought much of the coloration choices. It looks pretty Crusader Kings, but we'll see. Apart from being a grand strategy game, the Paradox games have, for me personally, always been a way to discover the entire world in a given time period. It's true. Something that's both a game and a travel guide to the past. With this update, Crusader Kings will finally get rid of the last artificial barriers to that kind of experience. Well, as the map will no longer arbitrarily end in Burma and Tibet. This lets us shine a spotlight on some of the most interesting states of the time period, such as the Tang and Song China, Heian Japan, Angkor, and many others. I guess the keyword here is artificial. Like, technically there's still a barrier to exploring the time period in that we're not getting any Australia or the Americas. But I understand the intention of what they're saying here. I'm being pedantic, sue me. With All Under Heaven, we want to not just add the missing parts of the map, but also fill in the living world of the past, which is what Crusader Kings does best at its best. The goal is that the new part of the map should feel like an integral part of the game. This means new governments with their own features, but it also means things like special buildings, new cultural traditions, and visual variety. East Asia will have its own look, with event illustrations, clothes, ethnicities, holding throne rooms, artifacts, and much more. Remember how I said they were never going to add China because they would have to add a whole new government type, and they're not going to do that? I mean, just calling myself out. This is pretty. As the final world introduction, this is also a work in progress. This is a vision and an overview of what we're making, but development is an iterative process, and so this diary is also an opportunity to give your input on the things we are looking to add. More details are also forthcoming for each and everything here in the coming diaries, but there's nothing stopping you from telling us already if there are things you think we should include or change. This goes for art, features, and even the map itself. Did that twice and now another. Yes, it's true. I'm very curious how different these new government types are. A central focus of an East Asian expansion by virtue of its sheer size as well as the reach and impact of its influence and culture has to be China. While it was a very different situation in 867, 1066, and 1178 respectively, China remains both a state that others emulated, and a political constant in all of those dates. We will talk a bit more about China and its features in future diaries, but here's a short overview of what we have planned and how we see its purpose. I did see that they do talk about the Japanese government type a bit, and I've spoiled a couple of things that are touched on. We'll get to that. Hegemony, a new tier title. Since China is a de jure realm that is more expansive than any one of the empires we currently have in game, we're adding a new title tier for it, a hegemony. In all of our start dates, China is the only existing hegemony, but others can be created using the decisions we have for uniting India or Rome. Those are the most reasonable those are the most reasonable choices. I think they've also mentioned before that that the Mongol Empire, that the greatest of Khans, will be transitioned into a hegemony level title as well once that's created. For now, there is no generic way to create these super empires, and beyond China, there are no de jure ones. Instead, we reserve its use for special cases with bespoke rulers and jurisdictions. Justifications. I read that word completely wrong. I think this is good. I think that one of the silliest things about Crusader Kings ever since Crusader Kings 2 was the fact that every kingdom had to, by game rules, belong to an empire. Which meant that there were empires painted across the map that just didn't have any historical basis whatsoever. They were just a loose grouping of kingdoms and geography. Like Carpathia, Tartaria, the Baltic Empire, which they don't even have a good name for. You know, stuff like that. All of these are Crusader Kings 3 examples, but having hegemonies be created and only exist because they're created makes the most sense, I think. Celestial government and merit. China was a bureaucratic state, and though it differed a bit depending on era, positions in government as well as in provincial administration were largely given to career officials based on perceived merit. Perceived being the key word here. Thousands would take the imperial examinations in order to start their career in public service, leading to possibly the most well-educated government apparatus in the world. Sure. Especially for the time periods. In All Under Heaven, the hegemony of China was a special type of government called the Celestial Government. It builds on the administrative government introduced in Road to Power for the Byzantine Empire, like we expected. House heads and governors are playable, excellent, and can build up influence and acquire positions, while families have a domicile representing their permanent power base they can build up over time. Where the Byzantine governors are solely appointed based on spreading influence, however, the Chinese system relies more closely on merit. Merit is a value that you build up during a lifetime in public service. Okay? Through serving in important jobs and taking good decisions. Merit cannot be spent like a currency. Instead, it's how you're compared to other applicants for any position. A high merit score might mean you can become a circuit tier governor, that's kingdom tier, or even a minister in the central government. Merit does not replace influence, since influence can still be earned and spent for more underhanded uses, even in a celestial realm. Interesting. Salary increases, so there's salaries. Treasury salary increases, right? The state gets a treasury. Candidate score and movement power. These are obviously developer art. Only non-governors can attend examinations. Ah, so these are the number of examinations completed. I see. In order to ensure a healthy crop of potential administrators at all times, the Empire will regularly host examination activities, where the applicants can earn a base merit score or even a higher one by demonstrating their skills for the Confucian classics, literary style, and essay writing. The Emperor, on the other hand, can control what skills are prioritized in the examinations by controlling the curriculum and hosting exams. Pardon me. and hosting exams. Whatever qualities are emphasized will shape which characters are likely to be able to become governors in the future. Treasury. Governors in China will not support themselves using the money from the region they govern. Instead, they will send the funds upwards to the emperor and his central treasury. The emperor then pays out a salary to the governor, but also assigns funds to the respective treasury of all governorships in the realm. This is going to be really complicated. This is going to be really complicated. Only gold can be spent on personal expenses, such as building up your family estate, paying for tutorship for your children, and so on. Treasury is what is used for expenses related to governing. This includes things like building buildings, paying troops, or disaster relief. Like with everything in this diary, there'll be more information about the treasury, including details of how money can be put into or taken out of it in a future China-centric dev diary. Chinese dynastic cycle. Chinese history is traditionally ordered by the dynasty currently in power. This is a phenomenon that goes far back in time, where often a new dynasty would prioritize writing the history of their predecessors. They would use the imperial archives to chart out and describe how the old dynasty rose, how they ruled, and how they eventually lost their way and succumbed to corruption, leaving a new opening for the new dynasty to save the day and restore order and propriety. In our timeline, the Tang, once a very successful and expansive dynasty. Sorry, I've been losing my voice at work lately, which is another reason I'm keeping this stream short. Ruled a vast and prosperous realm, are already troubled by 867. About 40 years from the start date, their dynasty would break into multi-factional civil war known as the Five Dynasties and Ten Kingdoms era. Eventually, the Song took power and built a new dynasty based even more strongly on the principles of bureaucracy and internal development. The Song were eventually replaced by the Yuan dynasty of Kublai Khan, who ruled a China that was unmistakably Chinese but also very Mongol-dominated. Yuan and other foreign dynasties were often referred to as conquest dynasties due to this different nature, at least initially. This is gorgeous art. In All Under Heaven, we have taken inspiration from how the Chinese described this at the time. A dynastic cycle where China can be in a stable era, essentially a type of golden age, where it can build its wealth and progress, orienting themselves outward like the Tang, focusing on military expansion of a vast tributary network. Another focus can be advancing the core region, with great building projects, economic development, innovation, and a strong bureaucracy, more like the Song or later Ming dynasties. But common to both types of stable eras, expansion and advancement, is that they can go for a very long time. As long as the rulers put the right people in positions of government, protect their subjects from invasions, and act swiftly against natural disasters, they are able to draw on the resources of China to perform great things. The eras come with different possibilities and rules for how to achieve these goals. In this way, China's neighbors will also know what to expect from the neighboring behemoth. Good to know. Common to both stable areas is how legitimacy is built and maintained relates to you moving in alignment with the era. If your dynasty has chosen an expansion era, then your legitimacy will suffer if you fail to expand. Oh. And will be even more damaged if outsiders take land or raid your lands. I was just watching a One Proud Bavarian video from a couple days ago, where he talks about one of his complaints is that there's no way to lower legitimacy. Not really. It kind of just goes up, and if the player knows what they're doing, it's only a temporary impediment. This isn't what he's asking for, But I see this as potentially a step in the right direction of the parts of his argument that I agree with, which I'm not going to go into right now, necessarily. With the ruling dynasty faltering, the cycle will eventually proceed to the unstable era. This is an era with its own rules and impact, just like the two stable variants. But here it is mainly to signify a period of change. Here people have begun to question the mandate of the rulers, and every action they take is under closer scrutiny. Natural disasters, wars, and other things will be viewed in a much more negative light, especially if the central government is unable to act quickly on them. Governors will be less selfless and may not take their responsibilities to the center as seriously, instead preparing for their own future. Should the empire's legitimacy be impacted strongly enough, this era is very likely to slide into a chaotic era where the ruling dynasty will fracture into a multi-factional civil war, much like what happened with the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms era. Should the ruling dynasty, on the other hand, navigate the unstable era well enough and emerge on the other side, then they will once again enter a stable era and be able to choose between advancement and expansion once more. In the 867 bookmark, the Tang starts in the unstable era. In the chaotic era, the hegemony of China title is suspended, while the various empires, kingdoms, and duchies in the Chinese realm are splintered into separate realms. These will quickly try to form their own dynasties in conflict with each other. Once a winner emerges, China will once again enter a stable phase, and the new ruling dynasty will be seen to have the mandate of heaven to rule the restored hegemony of China. This will mean choosing a type of stable era, as well as taking some other decisions about your long-term goals, including what capital to use and the traditional name and color to associate with your dynasty. There's much more to be said about the dynastic cycle, including how your bureaucrats coordinate to push for trying to change the current type of era, and how it deals with foreign conquest dynasties, but most of that will have to wait for a future diary of its own. Tributaries in China. For the Chinese Empire, tributaries are not all of what they are to the rulers in this step. Independent rulers can choose to enter a relationship with China and be legitimized by trappings of authority from China. The tributary is not expected to play a part in China's wars, and China will not defend its tributaries as a general rule. It will, however, be less likely to be attacked directly. It will, meaning the tributary? This is oddly phrased. Tributaries can attempt to create a closer relationship with their suzerain hegemon by going on tributary missions to the Chinese court, bringing gifts, goods, eunuchs, and other things to please the emperor. In return, they may receive economic benefits, legitimizing artifacts, or progress towards Chinese innovations. Alright, let's talk about Japan. Because this seems really interesting. Sounds like the CK2 menu, but good. Yeah, actually, very much so. Oh my god, I'm like tearing up. Hold on, let me blow my nose one more time. I need to try not to talk for the rest of this week. I'll be okay to finish this reading, but oh man. Between the sore throat and the stuffy nose, I'm just... One of the more unique regions of the medieval world is Japan. In our timeline, covering 867 to 1453, Japan is originally a state that's largely inspired by the Chinese way of doing things, with governors who do not directly own land, and a vibrant capital in Kyoto. Noble families play a bigger part in ceremony, fine arts, and intrigue than they do in China. but military campaigns tend to be small and directed at the Ainu or Emishi in the eastern part of the island, rather than other families in the realm. See, my Japanese history I know a little bit more about. I mean, okay. I would consider this the Emishi in the eastern part fine. I'm disagreeing with them a little bit geographically, but it's close enough to accurate. The Ainu are in the north, and the island of Hokkaido, which I don't remember the Ainu name for. And like, yes, the Emishi are more eastern, but they're also more northern. Anyway, I'm being a weeb. Over time, some nobles managed to install themselves in hereditary fiefs, and the country starts undergoing a gradual militarization, culminating in the establishment of something much closer to the feudal realms of the West. Shoryu and Ritsuryo, two types of vassals in one realm. Ritsuryo. Unlike administrative realms where governorships are generally duchies, and unlike China where they can be any tier, Japanese governorships are generally counties. This means power is a lot more fragmented than it is in other realms. In 867 and 1066, the vast majority of counties are held by Ritsuryo rulers, a government very similar to administrative, while by 1178 most of Japan is ruled by local Soryo lords, more akin to feudal. Ritsuryo rulers use influence to secure appointments and generally don't have strong armies, unless enabled by their house-related bonuses as described below. Soryo vassals, on the other hand, have gained de facto control of a region from the central state and made it a permanent fief. Their succession is hereditary, their armies are stronger, and they can more easily expand militarily to control multiple counties. Soryo vassals can be useful to the empire in times of war, but generally they are a liability, and a Ritsuryo that tries to turn their governorship into a Soryo fief will be considered a criminal. My Japanese is atrocious, I'm sorry. The long-term relationships between different houses are now tracked, this is house relations in blocks, and move along a sliding scale from great friendship to intense rivalry. Whenever a member of a house takes a significant friendly or hostile action against another house's member, such as a marriage or a murder, the relation between the houses will change to reflect the act. This is complex. In Japan, houses can also form blocks. These are groups of houses that all follow the head of one house, largely based on house relations. A block is a military alliance that is represented on the map, similar to steppe confederations, though with a clear leader and more far-reaching responsibilities. Block members will join the factions and wars of their leader, offensive as well as defensive. This means that when wars break out in Japan, they are not as limited despite the fragmented political situation. Setsu Minamoto block. Taira block. Setsu Minamoto block. Cool. The Emperor and the Kampaku. In our era, the Japanese emperors had varying degrees of power, but were generally relegated to a more ceremonial role than many of their foreign counterparts. The de facto ruler of Japan in all but name is usually the Kampaku, a Ritsuryo bureaucrat who rules on the emperor's behalf. The succession of the Kampaku is determined in a similar way to the Byzantine emperor's acclamation, but with a different set of weights, favoring, among other things, marriage ties to the imperial family. The emperor, or Tenno, has a great ceremonial importance and is playable, but only directly rules his own family manor in all our start dates. Like many of the noble families in Japan, he resides in the imperial capital of Kyoto. Is this the Emperor? No, this is the Kanpaku. Some dev art there. This looks like the same as administrative. Administrative, what's it called? Governorship aptitude, I think is the word. Oh, there's a, I didn't notice this. There's a hegemony crown now. For the, there's a hegemony map mode, which makes sense. Only Ritsuryo rulers may become Kanpaku by appointment, but Soryo rulers can take the top job if they build a powerful enough faction and thus establish themselves as shogun, the Shoryu equivalent of Kanpaku by force. The emperor themselves can also aspire to be the top position, and, if appointed as Kanpaku, is given the option to abdicate the imperial throne and rule as a cloistered emperor, representing periods of strong royal influence. Huh. Since the Kanpaku or shogun essentially acts as the top liege in the Japanese realm, they wield an enormous amount of power, and will also make use of special imperial policy laws to control what can and cannot be done by vassals in the realm. Should a shogunate be established by a shoryu ruler, this will start to usher in a societal change with more and more of the vassals in Japan forming shoryu fiefs. So, interesting. I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, it's historical, and I understand the... I understand the position you'd want to be in to transition to a Soryo. But it almost seems like a bad thing for the Empire overall. Like an increasing decentralization, which is really interesting from a gameplay perspective. So is the point, if you're Kanpaku or Emperor, is the point of your gameplay going to be to resist that decentralization? I'm not sure yet. I need to know more here. With most vassals in Japan starting out holding just one county, there's a great need for other ways to build permanent power. The family manor, which is available to both Shoryu and Ritsuryo rulers, is one way to build up durable power, and Japanese rulers will have many unique manor buildings for this purpose. Costs and benefits are both modified to better fit the needs and resources available in Japan. For the Shoryu especially, this is how special men-at-arms are strengthened and unlocked. Ooh. Another way to build up the power of your house is to invest your prestige into house aspirations. House aspirations have a theme, and spending more prestige to upgrade them will unlock abilities and modifiers that will allow you to both specialize and grow the resources available to you. Aspirations will allow you to shape the strengths of your house by focusing on military might, intrigue, or economic development, and will also unlock certain upgrades for your family manor. These are ambitions from CK2. But family-based. You invest them in your house rather than your person. Interesting. Take a closer look at Southeast Asia here. I know next to nothing about this region in this time period. Okay, Angkor has a lot of tributaries, it looks like. Pagan reaches further south than the map allowed. Spice Islands are all inhabited, which is more than you can say with EU4. Interesting. Southeast Asia in this timeline is not yet as close to the Chinese sphere of influence as Japan or Korea. The mainland as well as the islands are a mix of indigenous faiths with tribal rulers and Indophile states practicing Hinduism or Buddhism. Unlike the bureaucratic nature of the realms to their north, their realms here are often more transitory in nature. Small central realms often control networks of tributaries that contract or grow with relatively little drama. The great empires of the region are often more advanced versions of this, with priests administering the realm on behalf of self-proclaimed god kings in numerous temple cities. That sounds fun. The Mandala government. In all under heaven, Buddhist and Hindu states in Southeast Asia will predominantly start with the new Mandala government. This government form initially has a lower vassal and domain limit, and instead relies on its own flair of tributaries in a greater way. Mandala realms have the new temple citadel as their main holding type, though they can also hold castles and temples. Is this different than temples? The new temple citadel. Interesting. So, yeah, temple citadel. I'm concerned about having a holding type that's region specific. I don't know if that... It feels bad. Like, I mean, it looks like they're going into it here in just a second, but conceptually it feels bad. And I am concerned about that. I don't know a better way to put it. Like, why not use temples? What is different than temples enough to make a unique holding type? It's already weird enough that we have set holding types in a way. Especially for East Asia, but I don't know. I don't know enough about the history of the area, so I don't know what the justification is, and I should probably just keep reading before I get too judgmental, because I'm a little worried about this one. An independent Mandala ruler is considered a god king, or Deva Raja. Most of your authority and power stem from piety, and many things that would otherwise cost prestige or even gold now consume piety. To be a Devaraja, it means aspiring to be an ideal ruler in Buddhism or Hinduism, with your radiance attracting tributaries and vassals to your cause. The more convincing you are in this respect, the more tributaries you'll be able to steal from other rulers, and the more your power can grow. Convincing is an important word here, I think, when we're using piety, especially piety as a resource. It's not about being a good insert religion here. It's about appearing to be a good insert religion here. Which is why spending piety to change religion or reform your religion has always been a little iffy. Because it's like you have to put on a show of being the best Catholic ever to become a sex cult Christian Satanists, whatever meme religion you want to make. Like, there's a disconnect there. But if they're actually playing into the seeming bias, showing religiosity, that could be fun, is what I'm trying to say. Deva Rajas also have access to several new levels of devotion with increasing benefits that will increase the initially restrictive domain and vassal limits of the government. By advancing your status as a god king, a Mandala can eventually end up quite powerful, even if the initial drawbacks in the form of lower vassal and domain limits might make the government seem weak at first glance. Interesting. This is going to make succession rough. And unstable. This is pretty art. I don't have a lot to say about the art or like historical from a historical or artistic perspective, especially for this region, but it's very pretty. I like the composition here. As a god king, the cult around your person is essentially the same thing as your authority as a ruler. To remind everyone of their power, rulers would construct great temple cities. Complexes such as Angkor Wat or Borobudur still stand today and demonstrated the divine power of rulers by showcasing their power and by providing a ceremonial center for the realm of god kings. Capital temples make use of the new Great Project feature to let you, your vassals, and your tributaries invest in the growth of your capital temple. While they are costly, capital temples are the first way in which you can alleviate the domain and vassal limit restrictions of your government type, along with many other bonuses. A grand capital temple is also what will make tributaries remain with your heirs, who may not yet be as impressive in their role as a divine ruler as you are. But they use the term Temple Citadel as their main holding type. Is it a holding or is it a building type? I have so many questions about this mechanic that are just not clear to me right now, and it's a little concerning. Japan and China made sense to me. Temple Citadels, whatever they're calling them, don't make as much sense to me yet from a mechanics perspective, and that makes me anxious. Devaraja aspects. Similar to the Japanese house aspirations, as a god king, you will be able to invest piety into developing your personal cult. Focusing on warlike qualities will make it easier to gain piety through wars. Focusing on serenity might instead mean you can earn piety through more peaceful means. As an example, your choice of Devaraja aspect will also decide what benefits you get from having high levels of devotion. Cool. Short, simple, interesting. Okay, great projects. Maybe this will give me some clarity. Additional features in All Under Heaven, great projects. As mentioned above, another new feature to this update is great projects. This is a way for multiple rulers to pool their resources together to create something. Usually this would be the vassals in the realm coming together to help fund something like the Great Wall, but it can also be local governors banding together to help push through disaster relief after a national disaster. Benefits can both be direct, related to what the goal of the project itself is, and more individual in terms of what the contributors get for helping. Sorry, natural disaster, not national disaster. Those are different words. A new type of building slot has been introduced to allow great projects to create their own type of building that coexists with special buildings or monuments. Okay, it's a building type. Not all great projects relate to a great building or monument, however. though all will have tangible effects once they are completed. Allow great projects to create their own buildings that coexist with special buildings or monuments. So this is not a holding type, this is a building type, is what I think I'm understanding, which I'm more okay with. A new holding type is weird, a new building type is fine. Talk more about what projects exist, about great projects in an upcoming future diary. Natural disasters are a type of reoccurring situation that can strike in known areas. While the disaster impact is over relatively quickly, the situation will linger and center on the rebuilding of the region after something like a great flood. Cool. Every natural disaster comes with a related great project, which means multiple characters in the area can come together to fund the recovery effort. To this end, the projects will come with a number of optional investments that can potentially leverage the situation, either for political benefits or lead to rebuilding the area to become more populous than it was prior to the disaster. Our intent here is not that natural disasters be a random and extremely punishing blow to your game, but rather something to overcome that can present you with opportunities to demonstrate your skills as a ruler and use it as the possibility to ultimately advance your goals. Hot take, I'm okay with a punishing blow to your game. To an extent. I mean, I'm a vocal plague defender. I think plagues are fun. I think getting hit with plagues is fun. I think they were a little frequent on launch, but it was enjoyable. When I got hit with the Black Death on my Rome playthrough, that was one of the greatest experiences in Crusader Kings 3. That was awesome. I think we need more shit like that just throws a fucking wrench. Anyway. Silk Road. While China was enormously important in East Asia and its surrounding, for many parts of the world, China's impact was more indirect. We wanted to take the opportunity to include this in the expansion since it was still quite tangible. For millennia, goods and innovations flowed from China towards the West. Trade is not a feature of All Under Heaven, but the Silk Road will be visible on the map, and in controlling its entrepôts will yield economic benefits if China is in an era where it's stable. Trade next cycle, trade next year. Please, trade republics. You've surpassed my wildest imagination by adding China in the first place. Surely you're gonna do trade next. Another venue that will be open to Western rulers is that travelers to the entrepôts, a hard word for me to remember how to say, of the Silk Road may help spread Chinese innovations to their home realms. Ooh. What about the other parts of the map? This diary tries to give an overview of all major features for the expansion, but it also leaves a lot unsaid for future diaries in the coming weeks. We will be given a closer overview of not only the features already described, but also things not mentioned, such as Korea, the Northern Steppe, the tribal states in Southeast Asia, and of course the map itself. Next week's diary will start out by giving an overview of the new map, which will then be followed by more detailed breakdowns as we go through the features for each area. Cool. I'm still a little worried about mandalas. I just am. I'm sorry. Japan sounds way complicated, and I don't know if it needs to be this complicated, but it sounds interesting. Also, I'm a little worried about, like, how does Japan interact with the rest of the world? Which I guess isn't particularly historical, but they weren't entirely isolationist during this time period. We'll see. China sounds fun. I don't have a lot of strong feelings about China one way or the other, but it sounds fun and solid, and this seems like a reasonable way to make China work. Celestial government, dominions, merit, that's all logical to me, and I think no surprises there, really. Alright. I'm going to end the recording here. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, blah, 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 all that BS. You know the drill by now. I'm going to go talk shit about y'all with Twitch chat. Bye!